hey, you're really doing well. Like some of you, I don't think have moved all day, so I don't know if that's just because you're stuck or you're in trouble with the law, and that's what that helicopter's been doing, buzzing around outside there all day looking for you. But well done for hanging in there. We got 2 more presenters, basically, for the rest of today. The first is Chris Wenban, and I'm just not sure, where is... Oh, there. Thanks, Chris. So Chris is actually just going to come up, and Chris is representing the Australian Tiny Housing Association. Yep. Oh. And... House, sorry, it just says housing. I'm going to blame Jimmy for his, copyright issues right there, copy texting. But, so Chris, do you want to come on up? And Chris is going to give you a bit of a snapshot on just kind of how things are in that space for us and give you a bit of an idea on how all that's going. If you want, Chris, you can either wander or stand, whichever one you like.
Okay, I think I'd better stand outside the lectern because nobody will be able to see me otherwise. And I need a clicker. Clicker? Or is somebody going to have a... yes, that would be great, actually. Or if somebody can click me to the first... Saturday the 2nd of March, I was ahead of myself. It's birthday. My name's Chris Wenban. Just a little bit of background on me at the moment. I actually live in Victoria at the moment. And this is my house. So I'm president of the Australian Tiny House Association. I'm also a tiny house dweller, as you can see in the Mayflower, and I'm co-founder of a tiny house building company down in Victoria called Tiny Footprint. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Australian Tiny House Association. I only have 15 minutes. I know that I'm between you and Bryce Langston, so I will try and be as quick as possible. But what I want to do is drum up a little bit of enthusiasm for joining us at the Australian Tiny House Association to promote tiny house living in Australia across the board. So what we're trying to do is look at all of those in the tiny house community. And I know this is an Eco-Villages Day, but obviously there's a lot of crossover there. And ironically, I'm just about to move my tiny house to an eco-village in New South Wales. They're very, very excited about it. And I'm hoping to be able to promote tiny house living, not just as in terms of a tiny house village, but as infill within other sort of housing options as well. But what we're trying to do at the Tiny House Association is take tiny house dwellers, tiny house builders, people using tiny houses for not-for-profit purposes, such as the Tiny Homes Foundation in Gosford, who've got 4 tiny houses on skids, so it doesn't have to be on wheels. For the homeless, the Castlemaine Housing Project, they're looking at tiny houses, again for the homeless, Transition Village Wallen in Victoria, so lots and lots of organisations that are looking at using tiny houses for community purposes. Also perhaps people who don't think they'll ever live in a tiny house, but are looking at using tiny houses for extra income. So tiny houses benefit not just someone who wants to live in it, but say you've got a nice piece of property, you've got a house there, perhaps you're struggling to pay the mortgage, perhaps you know that as you get older your pension, your superannuation isn't going to be a lot, and an extra piece of income would be great. So putting a tiny house on your property, Airbnb-ing it, as we've seen Jimmy earlier was mentioning, is a great tool to be able to use, and getting a little bit of income and using tiny houses for that as well. So what we're trying to do is really, number one, give people a lot of information to understand what the tiny house community can do for you and what the rules and regulations are around living, building, and placing tiny houses. There's a lot of grey areas. Different states are all very different. So, locally we actually have state leads who are hopefully going to be able to have local information for people to be able to understand and really connect the community. I mean, this event is a great event to be able to connect various different communities, but people talking to each other, understanding what they're doing to progress within their own area, within their own council, the ability to live tiny, designing tiny houses. What do you need to think of? Do you need to think of power? Do you need to think of the sewerage options? All those kinds of things. You learn the most when you sit there and you talk to people as well. So we've got a few purposes up here, and I think one of the most important is collaborating with other organisations such as councils, local government, because at the moment what we can see in the Tiny House Association is that is where the real sticking point is for people to be able to live in their tiny houses on property. There are and from a previous presentation, there are definitely those outliers there who are quite happy to go against the rules and go ahead and live in perhaps positions that aren't, they don't have a permit or a tick in the box. But I think there are a lot of people out there who would really benefit and love to live in tiny houses, but because there is very much a grey area and perhaps in their own local area, they may not be supported as much. If we can change the regulation, if we can make it possible in a much more planned and formal manner, then I think there will be a lot of people out there who benefit from being able to use tiny houses in whichever they want to sort of support their lifestyle. So talking to government, talking to councils is another piece that we've already started doing. I've been at various meetings in South Australia, over in Perth, in Fremantle, and definitely in Victoria as well, where I'm from. We're involved in the Municipal Association of Victoria and talking about what is the path to being able to make tiny house living a little bit easier for people. If you join the Australian Tiny House Association, which I hope some of you will do, there are leaflets at the front desk if you're interested. Some of the benefits obviously are being able to spend time with people who've got similar ideas, but we're also looking at doing things like, if you're a DIY tiny house person, using suppliers who have relationships with the Tiny House Association to get discounts on different supplies, things like that. So it's making sure people are educated, giving them the knowledge they need, and some practical things like discounted money off prices for those DIYs as well. If you want to get involved, like I said there, we've got flyers at the front that will explain all of this. We are asking for £50 a year, pounds, sorry, that's the English in me coming out, dollars. I have been here for 15 years, you wouldn't believe it, would you? $50 a year to join, and really that is just to cover our costs. We're hoping to get grants to be able to do some funded things further down the path. But also then if you could volunteer your time to help. We are a volunteer organisation, so as I'm sure many of you are members of volunteer organisations around here, you would know that it takes a lot of time and effort to get these kind of things off the ground. So if you are interested, then go along to our website. And we've got the usual, the Twitter, the Instagram, and the Facebook page. You will notice that a lot of things have a bit of similarity. At the moment, that's me. I am trying to hand that over to a few people as well. We have seen a lot of very interesting things around the country. I have personally travelled around in Fremantle. They're actually talking about tiny houses, not on wheels, on foundation, but very seriously about how do they put tiny dwellings as infill, and how do they put that into their planning schemes. In South Australia, we actually had a dual meeting with the housing department and the Department of Planning there as well. So they're actively engaging with us and other sort of tiny house affiliated organisations to try and understand what are tiny houses and how they can use them, as I've said. Particularly in Queensland, we've got a state lead. She will be here tomorrow, Valerie Bars, and hopefully she can help on a local level. She's from ESC Consulting as well, which does a lot locally in the Queensland area to help people live tiny. If anybody saw the a news article, she helped a local Brisbane couple live in a tiny house in a family backyard. The big thing that we've got going on at the moment, so this is another plug. Plug number one is please join. Plug number two is even if you don't join the association, we are doing a survey. We really want to understand what's going on in the tiny house movement in Australia. We don't have any data. When I do kind of little interviews and journalists phone me up and they say, so how many tiny houses are there in Australia? I guess. I really don't know. I don't think there's anybody with any true knowledge about this. So I usually say, probably about a couple of hundred. just from a sort of guesstimate. But we are now going to do a survey. We've got it out there at the moment. If you go to the association website, there's a link on there, on our Facebook page as well. We've had about 260 responses so far. We are asking people to answer questions on, are they a community member? Are they a tiny house dweller? Are they a builder? Do they have a tiny house that they don't live in, i.e. Airbnb? And depending on who you are, you will get asked different questions. The data's starting to roll in. It's very interesting. For those who have pets, dogs are the way to go, it seems, in tiny houses. We're asking how much did your tiny house cost to build in terms of time, in terms of dollars. Do you have it insured? And if you do, where is that? What are your demographics? How old are you? How long did it take you to build your tiny house? So we're trying to get a whole load more data because that's going to be really useful to go to the likes of local government, to go to the likes of council and show them some statistics about what's happening. That, maybe we can correlate the fact that it's females who are the most likely to want to live in a tiny house, and maybe that's because of need. Is it a certain age group that needs to live in a tiny house or wants to live in a tiny house? Why are they doing this? And what are the tiny houses like as well? So please, if you are a member of the tiny house community, go fill in the survey. We would love to get to 1,000 survey responses. And we will do a report on that, we'll make it available, and we will then obviously use that in any conversations that we have with local councils, governments, etc., to give them fact-based information, because they don't know what's out there, and to be honest, neither do we at the moment. So that's just some of the stats we're getting from SurveyMonkey, which is great. So at the moment, the 51 to 69-year-olds are winning in terms of who's in a tiny house, which is very interesting. And that was me. So if you've got any questions, then I'm happy to ask. Otherwise, I'll be here tomorrow as well, doing the same presentation again. And like I said, go to the front desk where they've got some leaflets. They'll have all of our contact information. Get on the website, join, and do the survey.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Tell you, you're efficient.